Hi Club Scrap card makers, this is Trisha at Club Scrap with the Cobblestone card kit. I have my instructions, my kit, my trimmer, my score pal, and also my accordion pocket file ready to go to help me make this collection of cards. The pocket file has 4 pockets. We'll be using the first 3 pockets to help us organize everything for card set A, B, and C. If you remember, you have access to instructions on how to make this accordion pocket file for yourself. If you haven't done so already, be sure you get that done. Okay, so let's take the envelopes and the embellishments for the card kit. We'll set that aside for a little while we work on prepping everything else. In this set, right on the top here, I've got the set of 4 dark gray panels. These are just plain, and they're some of the smallest pieces in your kit. You can go ahead and file those in pocket A. And then we've got 4 longer, skinny black panels. Why don't you go ahead and grab those and set them in pocket C so they're out of the way. Now let's get busy trimming those cut aparts, and we'll file the pieces as we go. The first sheet I want you to find, you'll notice has 2 larger pieces up in this section, and those will be trimmed with the scissors, and you can also see these tiny little registration marks maybe on the paper. So we'll get started by trimming along the second one here vertically. So we remove this narrow strip from the edge. Then we'll rotate. And now let's take these 2 pieces that we prepped and we'll just put them in pocket B together. Now when I trim this next section, you want to be really careful because all of these little pieces just remain untrimmed on one single panel. And I also do want to remove this little white edge from what would be a scrap, but we're going to be using that in card set B. So I'm just going to cut right along the edges of this brick piece, and then I'll cut along my guideline. We'll rotate and make one more single cut here to create 2 art panels for card set A. And then here I will go ahead and remove the ivory strip so I have a piece I can work with for card set B. All right, let's take our next, we still have a little bit more cutting left to do on this. I'll place this horizontally in my trimmer and remove the 2 sentiments. And that leaves you with this really narrow strip, and these can be kind of challenging when you're working with a larger trimmer like this. My solution is to just move it down so it's a little bit closer where I can see, to ensure that those little guide marks are right in line with my blade, still holding down with that clear bar, and I can easily slice through the narrow pieces. File those in pocket B, and then these 2 pieces also go in pocket B. The next sheet of cut aparts, you also want to be careful. The 2 graphics on the left edge do not get separated, so make sure that you follow your guidelines carefully. We'll begin by removing the narrow strips from the end. Just keep working our way down. Okay, now we'll rotate, remove the 2 narrow sentiments, and then just one more cut to separate this into 2 pieces. Both of these go in pocket C. The hang in there and happy birthday, C. And the next strip, I'll trim it apart. These 2 signposts, they're really sweet. Those go in pocket C. And then this brick, this just goes, I'm going to put this in the 4th pocket that I have. I don't believe I ended up using this, but sometimes we just take leftover paper on the sheets and make artwork out of it in case you find a home for it. The next 2 little happy birthdays both go in pocket B. And trim out the next strip. There are 2 that say, but I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to wish you a happy anniversary or birthday. These go in pocket B. Sending hugs and much love, and your thoughtfulness is appreciated, A. And then we have a clock here, and also in pocket A. This piece is not used, but I'll put it in pocket 4 just in case we find a home for it. And these 2 tag-like pieces go in pocket C. One more cut apart strip. I don't want you to worry about cutting through this. I'm just going to make some vertical cuts here. Now I'm going to remove the white scrap from the edge of these, this piece right here. And we'll file the whole works in pocket B. And these 2 pieces also go in pocket B. These two larger pieces go in A. And then remember, with this one, there's going to be a little bit of a piece that needs to be shaved off the edge. And this Hope You Feel Better goes in A. This is a scrap, but we'll put it in D, or in the last pocket. There's going to be 4 art pieces here. They all go in pocket A. And then this last little square, not necessarily used, but I'll save it for later anyway. So let's get rid of our scraps, and we can get to scoring our cards. You'll want to keep your trimmer handy. We do have one more cut to make after we're done scoring. Let's begin with what I believe is a super fun card structure. And for that, we've provided you with 2 sheets of really heavy-duty cardstock. It's a 110-pound cover weight, and we're just going to score them both vertically at 4 1/4 and horizontally at 5 1/2. Again, vertically at 4 1/4, horizontally at 5 1/2. Both of these are used in card set A, but we have a little bit more work to do before we file them away, so I'll set them aside. Next, I'll take the off-white card base. This will be for card set B, and we'll score twice. Once at 5, and I'm going to flip the card base from bottom to top and then score again at 7 1/2. The reason we do that is because of the style of fold we'll be using. So again at 5, flip, 7 1/2, and repeat for all 4 card bases. You can file these card bases in pocket B, and then grab the corresponding cement colored card bases also for that same card. These get scored in a similar fashion, just at different measurements. So 4, flip, 6 1/2, and do that for the remaining pieces. File all of these in pocket B. For card set C, we'll be using these brick colored panels, and we'll place one vertically into our score pal, making sure that the number 7 1/2 is up here on the right. That way you know it's vertical. And we'll make 4 score lines. 1 3/4, 3 1/2, 5 1/4, and 7. And repeat that for your remaining panels. File all of these in your pocket for card set C. Let's take this last piece, this brick panel, we're going to place it horizontally into our score pal. And let's score on the odd numbers. So 1, 3, and 5. And flip it from bottom to top and score at 2 and 4. Okay, before I file this, we'll need to trim. We're all done with the scoring, so I'm going to set the score pal aside. Then, with our trimmer back on scene, let's place this vertically into the trimmer. So we're going to cut through the score lines that we made, and we'll score at, and then we'll cut, rather, at 3, 2, and again, as before, you'll just kind of make sure you can see everything, make sure you're stabilizing, and then cut at 1. Now you have these 4 little pieces that will grow up to become what I've been calling a butterfly mechanism, and we'll file this in card set C. And let's finish prepping our card bases for set A. Now, using my instructions, you can see that there's a diagram up in the top right corner of page 2, and this is precisely what we're about to do. You've got your 2 8.5 by 11 stone colored plain papers. We've scored them vertically at 4 1/4 and horizontally at 5 1/2, and our goal is to make solid cuts where exactly in this shape that I've got right here, which is basically going to be 2 inches above and below our score line. Let's go ahead and just start with that. Maybe I'll just place my ruler here, and I'll put my 0 right on my score line here, so it reads 5 1/2 at the top and 5 1/2 at the bottom. And I've got a nice sharp craft knife here, so I'm right on the center score line. I'm going to start at 2. Here's my 0, and I'm going to end at 2. Boom. I have a nice slot going here, right through the middle of my paper. So then I'll rotate, and I need to cut 2 inches from the center score line. So I'll use my grid ruler once again to just make sure I'm nice and level. And I'm 2 inches to the right of the center. I'll stop at the score line, and those two marks should intersect, and they do. Okay, then I'm just going to flip this over, and once again, I can even use my handy cutting mat here to make sure my paper's level, and here's my score line right at the 0, and I can make sure I'm at 2 inches with my grid. I mean, these grids, you know, anytime you can marry them up and use them to help you find your cuts, that's always a win. So I'll just once again make a slice right until I get to that score line. It matches up with the one I made earlier. So there's my shape. I basically have 2 L-shaped cards, and that's why we only gave you 2 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, because each one makes a set of 2 cards. And then to make your card itself, all you do is fold in on the score line. And by the way, as I was making these cuts, the bump of my scores were facing up. And then now I have this card. It's an A2 size with a short, narrow flap on the left side and another flap at the top. You can also do it this way, where the flap is at the top. It's a vertical card, and this opens to the right, which we will be making 2 like that and 2 like this. So repeat that process with the other 8.5 by 11 sheet. Bumps are facing up while I do my cutting. And again, I'll use my 0 center to help me get this positioned, just so that I have something with which to put my ruler against, to make sure everything's lined up and level. Great. Let's take all of these pieces, we'll put them in pocket A. I'll clean up my work area, and then we'll get started with our cards. I've removed everything from pocket A, including my card bases, and I've folded them all in the same fashion so that the narrow flap is at the top or the side of the card. And then I've got 4 sets of materials here for 2 vertical cards. They're going to use a gray panel, and I just love that gorgeous dark gray paper. It's very top of the line, let me assure you. So I have a sympathy card paired with thinking of you during this difficult time, and then the clock, which is kind of a neat play on words there. And then we have the get well soon, along with hope you feel better. And then you can obviously pair up the other ones. Sympathy with sending hugs and much love, plus the lantern here. And then the thank you is the other horizontal card. Essentially, they're all built the same way. So let's make the get well card. I always seem to have a need for those. And the assembly is quite basic on this card. The first thing we want to do is make sure that our panel gets attached to the gray panel, centered at the left, right, and top. So you want your margins to match here, and you'll notice there's a little extra gap across the bottom, and that's totally okay. I'll use my grid ruler to just check for centering here. I'm going to have it at, looks like 1 5/8 on each side, and across the top and left edges we're going to have a 3/8 of an inch margin. That way I know that this is centered and level on my card, and maybe I'll even work with it on my longer side. 3/8 from the edge and 3/8 from the top. I'll put some adhesive on the back here and plop this down using the ruler's edge to make sure it's nice and level. And again, you'll notice this wider space across the bottom. That's by design. Next, we're going to place this centered onto our card base as well. So we're going to do, looks like a 1/2 inch margin on the top, left and right again, and that will match on the bottom as well. Now be very careful. I'm only going to attach this to this flap. Be sure to not get adhesive onto the larger lower flap, just the 2-inch upper flap. So when you put adhesive on the back of this, make sure it doesn't surpass the 2-inch mark. And once again, I'll find my center, and we're talking a 1/2 inch from the top and a 1/2 inch from the sides. And that's beautifully placed. So on the inside, that second flap, it's still basically on the front of the card, but if you would like, you can go ahead and attach your little clock, and just make sure that it's going to be hidden by the dark gray panel. And then when you open it this way, you can add the center sentiment, which is, in this case, hope you feel better in no time. And you can put that, you know, upper half, plenty of room for a signature. Plus, you know, when you open it, you can kind of tell there's another greeting behind there, behind the flap. So how do we hold all of this closed? Well, you need a couple of things. some sort of a paper piercing tool and a cork board. These can be really inexpensive if you don't have an awl. You can, of course, use a thumbtack or a T-pin, really anything. I'm going to take some of this black jute, cut a fresh end, and thread it onto a needle that has a hole that will be small enough to fit through the holes on my shell buttons. So before you bother threading something, you might want to run the needle through the hole of the shell button to make sure that the needle is going to fit. Okay, so here's our goal, is to have the shell buttons placed on the card, and you want to make sure that you don't pierce through the bottom layer of this card. So I'm going to have two basic shell button closures, in a sense, and we want to mark so that the holes will be in the stone colored panel. I'm making a real gentle mark here so that I don't pierce through the entire 2 layers of the card. And then I will open this up and make permanent stitching holes for myself. Then all you need to do is start, if you want to have the tails of your thread on the outside of the card, which I kind of liked, I'll start going from the outside, come back up through the back, go through the other hole, and you can see how quick and efficient this is. You have 2 choices here. You can tie bows or you can just tie knots. We're going to go with the knot approach for time-saving benefits here. And then trim the tails and attach the other button in the same manner. Okay, so if everything went according to plan, I should be able to close this, and tuck the flap of that front panel right underneath those buttons, and it should actually be able to stand up perfectly due to the opening here at the bottom. It just kind of allows it to be vertical and stand on the table surface without it being open. I just think this is a really, really clever card structure and a great way to make a unique card style just out of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. All the remaining 3 cards in this set are completed in the same manner. So one of the things that we're going to do now, and that you could do at home as well, if you would like to just proceed with me on making the other card varieties, is to take your prototype along with all the other pieces for card set A and slide that into the size A2 envelope, and you're ready to go for when you want to finish your cards. I've sorted through everything that I had in pocket B, and I had you file this. It's technically a scrap, but we were able to repurpose it for a card, and I'm going to have you cut this into 2 vertical pieces, or 2 pieces that will be used vertically, at 1.5 by 5.25. One piece might be a little bit narrower than 1.5, doesn't matter either way. Then I separated these into 2 pieces, and then we have, but I'm pretty sure we're supposed to wish you. All of these go together. I also had you file this in B, but actually this ends up getting used in C, so I'm going to set that one aside. And then your other card variety in this set will use this Ivy and Stone, the Happy Birthday, Enjoy, Hope It's the Best One Yet, and then a craft tag, and then this guy. So I've got my cards paired up here with 1 large off-weight and 1 cement piece. So I'll marry that up with my card, and that way when you do want to put everything together, all the pieces parts are there. And then I'll pile this on there. That's ready to go for later. This is what we're going to make right now, this vertical double Z fold card. Now, the reason I had you flip these card bases when we're scoring is because our folds will go in 2 separate directions. The first fold will be literally in half, so you just want to double check to make sure the bump of the score is on the inside of your fold, not on the outside. Oops, that is incorrect. It's not half, so be careful. I almost thought it was in half, but this is the part where it folds in half. Okay, all good. Want to burnish that you can. All right, and then this one, that does fold in half actually, and it back in half on itself. So the actual structure of the card, you've got your card base that has the large 5 by 7 back, and then this narrower flap. Same thing here. It has a backing that is proportionate in size to your card base, and then when everything is closed, the center flap just goes a little bit past the center of the card base flap. It's really just kind of a sweet look. And then if you look at it from a side view, you have this cool little gap in there. Let's assemble this little piece that will be added to our card. We'll start with our little decorative piece that fits right onto the craft tag. And I'm going to attach that with bookbinding glue out of a needle tip applicator. We've included some of this gorgeous ivory or off-white, I don't know what color you want to call it, satin ribbon. And I'm just going to trim off a piece. I'll fold it in half. And I'll thread it through the tag to make a loop. Bring the tail ends through the loop and pull. If you want to do a fresh little angle cut once you've done all that pulling, that's fine. Okay. So this piece is the base of our little assembly. And then we have the happy birthday that will sit on top of it. And then we have this piece that will sit on top of that, sort of centered. I think that is just so sweet to have all these little elements like this, adding a lot of dimension. So you can see where I should probably be aware of my adhesive application. I'll just kind of make sure it's on the right-hand side of this happy birthday. And then I'll be careful too where I put my adhesive on this craft tag, more through the center so that it matches the height of the tag I have behind it. I actually want this to be visible, kind of peeking out, so I'm going to move this in just a little bit. Thankfully, my ATG was a little flexible for me. Nice. Okay, so now that this is ready to go, I'm going to place adhesive on the back of my cement-colored Z-fold panel. If you want, you can go ahead and measure this. Just make sure, for centering, if you'd like, I'll just eyeball it, I guess. Not my favorite thing in the world to do. Wait, did Trisha just say eyeball? And then this flap has to be attached here. Be sure you don't get any adhesive in these other areas that require movement to be able to open the card. So I'm just going to put some adhesive on that side. Now I can add my sentiment to the middle of the card, making sure that I don't go past where this flap is going to live. And then the same thing is going to be true here. Like, I want to make sure that I don't put adhesive on this edge, otherwise it will seal the card closed. So just make sure it's only on the left half of your assembly. Very nice. And there's my cool card. Love it. Okay, you'll do the other one in the same fashion, and let me just quickly show you what I did to finish the fourth card, the third and fourth cards. So it's the same exact assembly. I simply stapled my satin ribbon to the top of the panel after I trimmed it. I also added some Club Scrap spruce ink, just sponged it onto the edge of this and also on the edge of the cement panel. And on the inside, I added the scrap strip that we salvaged so that it kind of nestles in right here, and the sentiment goes on the inside as well. Again, making sure that it's covered when the card is closed. This is a beautiful, easy set, and remember, if you've got paper at home, you can trim your cards and your panels to the same sizes that I've provided to you and make more cards just like this with what you already have in your stash. Okay, let's prep for card set C. I've got my cards sorted out here again, and just to give you a walkthrough for these last tall cards, there will be a set where you'll have a card base, a black panel, a butterfly mechanism, hang in there, and You Don't Look a Day Over Fabulous will be one vertical card. The same pieces except for the happy birthday, and here's your daily hug, or here's your daily hug, yes, happy birthday. Actually, this happy birthday is supposed to be here, hang in there, is there. Sweet, sweet card. Okay, then we've got the other set, which is the same pieces except for You're the Best with You Rock. So I wanted to walk you through the making of this particular card because just in case you have a question about the steps. I have my cutting mat here because we need to make a simple slit. This really isn't that complicated. It's just nice to be able to show you how to do it. So I'm going to grab my cutting mat, a ruler, and a craft knife. Again, making sure you have a sharp enough blade. We'll make a slit right in between the two elements of this card. Just making sure you don't go too, through them to separate them completely. The width of the slit only needs to be able to accommodate this little tag that goes in between the layers. That's all there is to it. That's the only reason why we're doing that. We can also prep our tag a little bit. We'll take some of this silk ribbon and I make my 2 opposing angled cuts, folded in half with the grain direction of the ribbon. In other words, the way the ribbon wants to be folded. And you can take a little mini stapler and staple, or you can use a brad, whatever you have on hand, and then that will live in here. We have some other really fun stuff to do to create this card, so let's get to that. Oh, we'll maybe before we start, we'll attach this. So when you are adding the adhesive for this panel, you just want to make sure that you do not go within the area where the tag needs to move. So that means anything above the tag and around the outside edge. I left the tag in there so I would know where to put my adhesive. And then center this onto the black panel, and that'll be ready to go when we finish our card. And of course, when I make these, sometimes I just do all of the steps, for all 4 art panels at the same time. It's up to you how you want to set up your little card making assembly line. Inward bump of the scores on the inside of this fold. And just make sure. We're going to make like a square shape, basically, like this. To finish it off, this is a nice, easy way to do this to make sure your ends lined up nicely, is I made a nice crease and created a 1/2-inch tab on which I will add some squiggles of bookbinding glue. Oops. Then just bring up the opposing edge so that the card is flat when you're bonding those 2 layers. And then when I open it up, just give it a second. That's, dried in place and really looking great right now. The next thing we need to do is prepare our butterfly hinge. Now I had you flip the paper so we could make what will become an accordion folded piece. Just make sure the bumps of the scores go on the insides of the folds. And that little accordion will be exactly what we want. Now place the accordion so that there are 3 mountain folds. So I've got this peak in the middle and a peak to its left and to its right. My goal is to glue these 2 valleys together. So if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I want to put glue on 2 and 3 and glue on 4 and 5. So a little glue in this spot. And then I should be able to just squeeze these together. And that's how I got, I decided it looked kind of like a butterfly, which is why I call this a butterfly mechanism for no other reason. Or maybe a bow, I don't know. It's good to give something a name so you can reference it more easily, especially when you're writing instructions. Okay, so I have 2 flat surfaces, this surface and this surface. This one is a doubled up. And for no particular reason, I'm just going to put the doubled up surface on the back of my panel, and I just want to make sure it's centered and it's level. In some cases you can use the ruler for that if you want. So I'm putting glue all the way across the doubled over side of my butterfly and just place it on the back of your black panel, centered and level. Now that leaves one other flat surface, bendable flat surface, and that's going to act as a connector for my card base. So when I attached it, I was cognizant of where my seam is, and I wanted to put the seam for my card at the back, and then so that this would be on the finished edge of the card. Now you can barely even see the seam, but it's just kind of a thing. So to do that, I'll put my adhesive on the back of my little butterfly mechanism, and then make sure you check for the seam, and I'm going to glue it on the opposite edge and just lay it right in there. Give it a second. I'm also going to make sure the card can flatten because I want this to be level and I want it to be mailable. So now I can kind of work that hinge a little bit. The beauty of using a wet glue for this process is that it allows me to make some fine-tune adjustments before the glue really bonds with the paper, and then it's not going anywhere ever again. So now I have this adorable card that's ready to go for mailing. Let's take a quick tour of all the cards in the set. Starting back from the beginning for card set A, I told you you could make bows or just ties. There's plenty of jute fiber to do whatever you like. Here I have little bows, which are just a little bit more time consuming. So this is the sympathy card. And I like these mother of pearl shell buttons because they're nice and flat, and yet they're sturdy enough and they look beautiful. And here's the get well version, same type of flap structure. And then for the horizontal cards as well, they will stand up on their own because of that flap. So it opens from the left and then up to reveal the greeting inside. And then here's the thank you card as well. Same type of thing. Really sweet. I love how interactive it is. Then we have our double Z fold cards. And you'll notice on this one too, I just added the spruce colored ink along the edge of my cement colored panel. There's the birthday one that we made together, but with ink this time. And here we have the one with the brick scrap added to the right edge. We have enough brick of that to make two the same. And then finally we have our 4 standing box cards. I just love how that stands up. Now this one I had enough jute left over to tie a bow and a knot, like both of them, to fill that space between the upper greeting and the lower sentiment. Especially because with these there isn't really a spot necessarily to put a sentiment on the inside, and I would handwrite my sentiment or my personal greeting here or on the back of the card. We have a second one like it, and I had plenty of this gorgeous satin ribbon to tie around once and then plus tie the knot onto the ribbon. And then for the final two we have just a pocket with our tag, like what we prepared together. And then on this one I added some pieces of the stone scrap that was left over, and there's quite a bit of that left. So you can punch into the shapes or use it to make additional cards, whatever you like. Because don't forget, there's also a fabulous set of stamps available with this Cobblestone collection. I really hope you enjoyed the card kit process, and don't forget I also have a full-length tutorial on how to make 8 beautiful scrapbook pages with this collection.